I'm going to jump around a little bit with this video, but there are a couple things in my mind, and I'm watching a few things. I wanted to share this and highlight, and I'll drop links for the things that I talk about in the description so you can go down there and search them out and do your own research as you wish. But the thought is there's the US versus China, there's the Tesla versus NIO, or rather, Tesla versus Chinese EVs. And then there's also the autonomous driving space. And so I want to cover a little of this. At the bottom, I've got it, my thinking Tesla versus NIO, or is there a partnership potential there with autonomous driving aspirations? And then, of course, the video, and thank you to Marcel Munch for sharing this. I liked it on Twixter, as I've started calling it. The autonomous is just one of the things that NIO vehicles are able to do. I'm just curious if NIO actually beats Tesla if they don't end up partnering together in some form or fashion. I do know that NIO is focused on safety. I think that matters a lot, especially in the autonomous space, and especially if we consider this. Now, this, and I didn't blow it up on the screen, but I'll link it in the description. This is from the annual SEC filings. This is page 98 or 95, depending on how you're looking at it. And this is the most recent filing from NIO. But here, the reference here is the regulations on autonomous driving. In China, they're already looking ahead and expecting this. Robotaxis are already in play and testing and actually going in China already. And one of the reasons is this autonomous driving and the government and the regulations that allow it. Now, in the US, it's a very different scenario. And so, it's interesting because at the same time, Tesla might actually have a federal criminal charge levied against them, and more on that in a second. You also have this piece of news: Elon Musk going to China and trying to get approval to do some testing with Robotaxi in mind and the autonomous driving. And so again, that's why the reference in the law and the regulation matters in China, that they're already doing it. So Tesla and Elon, they want a piece. They want to get involved in this. And so maybe they end up doing some sort of partnership, as Marty had referenced. Marty, shout out to he and Obi over on Courtside Financial for doing a great couple of podcasts where they talked about things like this. And there may be an advantage if Tesla actually partners with NIO in some form or fashion. And timeframes are unknown. Tesla would still have to get the approval to do some autonomous or robotaxi type of testing in China. But again, China, the regulation side of things, they're already looking ahead in this, and there are already companies doing it. I think companies that are ahead of Tesla. So if this is the kind of thing going on, and the article, shout out to NIO Investor, NIO Switzerland, who brought this to my attention. I saw this, and then I said, okay, I need to bookmark this and then pull it up. And so here's what I see. This is the article, and this is just my take, my thought. When we're talking about federal criminal procedures and processes and things like charges being put in and that sort of thing, a wire fraud charge is a really easy thing for a federal prosecutor to win if they would go to court. And so I do think that this is more serious than maybe it has been in the past. Also, this is even from Elon Musk himself in the most recent earnings call, which, by the way, I correctly predicted that within the first 10 minutes of the call, he would hype robotaxi or autonomous driving or full self-driving or whatever you want to call it. Again, the same thing he's been doing for many years now. But this is the first time I've heard him catch himself, so I highlighted it because the way he said this was very careful. He said supervised full self-driving, and he was talking about, again, this is when he's hyping this autonomous driving supposedly that Tesla has in the works, but he said very carefully that supervised word, that tells me it is possible that the feds have found something, they're giving them trouble. And I mean Tesla on this, not necessarily Elon. My guess is that, I'll come back to this so you can watch this again if you'd like while I talk. But my guess is the way this plays out with Tesla and this possible issue of wire fraud and misrepresentation to investors, I think that it would be pretty easy for the feds to make a case out of this. I think typically if they would go to trial, they would want to have two witnesses who would testify for them, probably former Tesla employees or someone, who was maybe injured or harmed from the failure or the supposed failure of, the FSD or autonomous driving that Tesla has. But again, that's over here in the US, not in China. And so I'm really kind of watching this. I'm curious how this is going to play out, because the map in some respects, and the direction getting to autonomous driving in a lot of ways, because of the regulation and the forward looking adoption by the Chinese government with respect to the regulation, I think it's going to be easier to do in China for companies that can operate it there. So we'll see what happens with Tesla. I don't know if Tesla has the safety features as enough of a focal point that they'll be allowed to. But with on the US side, and again, I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but there's just a lot of these dots, and we're really all over the map, literally even globally at this point with this stuff. So Elon, I don't think gets in any trouble. Generally, if you've got nine-figure money and or the right political connections, you're not going to do any federal prison time. There are a few asterisks, like allowances for that, but generally speaking, I don't see that happening. I do think that it is very possible that Tesla could end up getting a criminal charge against it, and it would more than likely be a fine, a monetary fine that they would have to pay. But that's if, the prosecutors who are looking into things, want to move forward and feel confident they can get Tesla to settle, and then they can call it a win and, get some PR out of it and some money and whatnot. So, I don't know how it affects investors in Tesla. And really, I don't know that it affects Elon, other than maybe making him a little more cautious in his speech. And then again, maybe he's thinking more in terms of, let me just try and get this going over in China. Final thought. I do think that if not just Tesla, but anyone else ends up partnering with NIO and there is a play in the autonomous driving space, I think that the generation 4 power swap stations that NIO are going to be putting out, I don't know that they've got any out yet, but the additional compute power that those are going to have, I think that plays in. And so just kind of file that away. That's something that I'm thinking about and kind of watching. Again, this is just, it's really interesting to watch all this develop and kind of unfold. But in any event, I do think NIO has an advantage, although some might not like this safety, the focus on safety by NIO is really important if we're talking about autonomous driving. And that was what I liked about Mobileye, which, by the way, was a partner of NIO. I need to look and see if they have re-upped it. They were still working together as of the last filing that I looked at, annual filing. Typically, NIO partners and does 3-year terms with their partners, and then they'll re-up every 3 years if they continue to work together. Anyway, I talked a lot more than I intended, but I wanted to get this thing kind of put together. And again, the way I see things sometimes is almost like there's a dot over here, there's a dot over there, there's a dot over here, and I'm just trying to kind of connect it all and see, and sometimes it doesn't connect, and we'll see how this plays out. And maybe, Elon trying to go over and get approval in China has nothing to do with this potential charge, from the federal criminal side of things in the US. However, this has been kind of an ongoing story. I don't think this is new. I just think this is a new development. And the thing that kind of caught my attention was his very careful wording for the first time ever, even when he was hyping during the earnings call. Normally he just hypes and it's just, it's borderline nuts, some of the stuff he says. So the fact that he was very careful with that one word kind of nestled in there, it just caught my attention. So I wanted to share it and see if anyone else caught any of that, is thinking about any of this stuff. Drop it in the comments. Thanks for stopping by and have a great day.